If I delegate to a virtual assistant, they will steal all of my money and buy Ferraris in some other country.
This is the perfect RIA, in case you didn't know. Bringing you all the strategies to help your business grow. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Sit back and listen in while you feel the beat, yeah. Another myth bites the dust.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your co-host, Matthew Jarvis, and with me, as usual, and in person, the man, the myth, the legend, Micah Shalansky.
Jarvis, how you doing, bud?
Man, I'm good. As we're recording this, you recently returned from the Holy Land, and it's exciting. We're here in person in Scottsdale. We just did a couple of days with strategic planning with our TPR leadership team. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been a blast, right? A lot of good things. And sometimes when you're setting these events up, it requires a tremendous amount of work. Now, great things on the other end are going to come out of this, right? Really streamlining, getting on the same page, creating up some great rocks. What are things you're going to do? How are we going to move the needle, etc. But when you're thinking about a planning, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. And this kind of is going to lead into our conversation, Jarvis. The question is, how much of this event planning are you going to do? Or how much are you going to bring in a team member to help with that? And then sometimes we run into issues like in our RA firm, we don't have someone that specializes in event planning of this nature, right? So then how do you go out and you get about those resources to really make it a rock solid event?
Yet, as you mentioned, right, some of our listeners are saying, hey, I have a big team and I've got someone who handles that, right? I have a full-time person on my team that handles that. Others are saying, hey, I don't have a team. In fact, maybe it's just me and I don't have the budget. I don't have the bandwidth. I don't even know where to look to find a full-time person. And what we want to talk about today is that there are options besides hiring someone to be on staff, on payroll, a W-2 employee that works full-time in your office. There are other options that we have and currently still use.
You know, and I'm also going to say it could be someone that has 1 or 2 staff or even 10 staff.
Yes.
But that staff is working full-time at your current goals and potentially, I had a hard time saying at capacity because that's never the case, but they're working full-time towards other things. And you want to bring in someone who's a pressure relief. I know we use this in our office in surge. During surge time, we'll get some contractors on standby to kind of take care of some overflow stuff. Now, I could justify in my mind, my team should be able to handle this, or I could say, hey, I'm going to carve out a little bit of money and I want to make this a rock star experience for my clients and my team, and I'm going to bring in some relief staff that's going to be there. And that's a great contractor, right? So there's a lot of reasons that I would go out and want to get other team members that are not full-time. It is a different commitment when I bring on that at least for me, it feels like a different commitment when I'm bringing on that full-time employee under my payroll.
Well, it is for sure a different commitment, right? You've got to go through more work to find the person, to hire them. You now have a legal liability. They're now an employee. You've got to deal with taxes and unemployment and employment law and all these different things. Yep. And so there's been many times in my career where I've brought in virtual employees. So of course, Colleen, who's been my office manager now for 10, 11, 12 years, something like that. She's obviously a full-time salary employee. But there's been multiple times where I've brought in a virtual executive assistant, a virtual paraplanner, a virtual Excel expert, a virtual process writer. So there's a lot of virtual people I've drawn from. We want to talk today about how you find those people, how it works, when it doesn't work, warning things to watch out for.
Yeah, those are really, really important things to be thinking about. And also one of the things that I like about contractors, at least mentally on my cash flow side of it, is this is an expense I can easily cut.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
When I'm bringing on a team member, while I don't have an obligation to keep them for the next 20 years, my thought is when I'm hiring a full-time employee, it's a mean move to hire them and then fire them a month later just because you don't have the cash flow, you don't have the growth for it. Now, if they don't do their jobs, whole different story, right? But as a contractor, it makes it really nice. I can bring them in for a limited time. And you know what? If they're rock solid, well, then fantastic. I'm going to keep that engagement going. But if they're not, or they're just helping with a small piece of the pie, that's a limited scope in my mind. And it makes it easier for me to bite that apple.
Yes, and especially in today's labor market where it is difficult, though certainly not impossible, it's difficult to find great employees. It's a highly competitive market. This is a way to outsource that. Let someone else do that work. Let someone else do the recruiting and the screening and the background checks and those things that likely aren't your area of expertise.
So let's talk about some head trash with this, Jarvis. When I first started doing virtual assistants, right? It was after Tim Ferriss' 4-hour work. We'd go hire someone in India that's free. Not
for
exactly the case.
$12 a week or something.
Yeah, whatever that
hour,
is, right? So that's exactly what I went out and did. And I went and hired an Indian assistant and started going through these things. And I had so much fear and head trash, right? They're going to steal all my stuff. They're going to screw things up. They're not going to do it right. I mean, all of these things in your mind. Now, if I fast forward the clock today, and we'll talk a little bit about the progression. If I fast forward the clock today, my executive assistant has virtually every single piece of information on me that's out there, right? They have a credit card that they can use. They don't have access to my bank accounts. That is where I draw the line, right? But they have a lot of access to all my personal information to do things. And I got to say, the more information I give them and more I empower them to do their job, the better it is. Now, I still wouldn't hire a brand new one and give them full carte blanche because that's just bad leadership skills, right? But that is the progression, at least for me, from this holy crap, I don't know really what I'm doing overseas for foreign contractors to do things, et cetera, to full-time executive assistants that have access to just about everything. What about you?
Yeah, same thing. And there is that old adage, though it's not 100% true, of you get what you pay for. So if you're reading an online forum about how you can find someone for $5 an hour working out of Mars or wherever they're at this point at $5 an hour, A, you're probably not going to find that, and B, it's probably going to be really sketchy. And so you'd have to be incredibly careful. And there are people, and we know them, who use those effectively, and they give them a very narrow scope. And they say, hey, put labels on these envelopes or something like that. But if you want the kind of person where you're going to say, and you and I both do this, hey, book my flights and use my credit card and find me dinner and find me a place to go work out and find me all these things, that is going to be a more expensive, higher caliber person.
Absolutely. Now, those other lower expenses can be great for several things. For example, I guess I can tip my hand a little bit on this one. I love to use them for practical jokes on people.
Sure.
Right? You know, a good $5 an hour, $10 an hour Indian job positions or in the Philippines and whatnot. Great for pulling pranks on your friends.
Yeah.
Short of that, now we need to elevate this to maybe a higher caliber, someone that has more experience that's really going to help.
Now, for those of you listening, lest you are concerned, Micah was not referring to me as his friend. Not because I'm not his friend. The no prank rule is still in firm effect.
Yes.
So I know some of you are worried that Armageddon is upon us. That's not the case, at least not yet. Virtual assistants also come in handy, Mike, as you referenced earlier, when you don't need a full-time person.
Yes.
This could be you're starting out, and we always advise that you hire someone as quickly as you possibly can, someone to do paperwork, to follow up on things, to order new paper for the copy machine, all of these tasks. And by the way, in my book, Delivering Massive Value, there's a 2-page spread of everything I had a virtual assistant do over a 6-month period. I had her, happen to be a woman, record everything you do. I need you to make a list so I can see these. This is a 5-star tip, by the way. I need to know what it is you're doing. And so they would record a list of all these things. That list is in my book.
You know, and it's another way with a virtual assistant to bring on the caliber of a full-time employee at a part-time pay.
That's right.
Right? Because they're working for other people. That's the reason this works, right? But it's a great way to segment into this. And especially if you're new to a virtual assistant, one of the things that I would recommend, Jarvis, I think you'd agree, you want to go to a higher-end virtual assistant.
Yes.
That's where you want to go. You're going to default to a lower-end virtual assistant that doesn't have the experience that's needed, but you don't really know what you need. You get a higher caliber virtual assistant that's going to come in, or executive assistant that's going to come in, and you ask something, they're going to have the forethought to say, hey, I've done something like this before. And they're going to ask the 17 other questions that you didn't bother to even think about answering that are needed for them to be successful in their job. So that's the reason you're going to push and want to find potentially a service, potentially someone else that's out there, et cetera, that says, hey, no, I need a higher end virtual assistant, especially if you're first time doing this. Man, buck up, pay those dollars. It's really worth it.
Yeah, the higher end ones are also going to be more proactive, right?
Yes.
Because they're part of a bigger organization that gets, hey, listen, if we're contracting this virtual assistant, typically it's for a set number of hours a week or a month, and they're not using up that time, this contract's going to get canceled. An example, my current executive assistant, Zach, who we're going to talk about in a few minutes, he, and again, if you call my wife and tell her this, I'm not going to be your best friend, but the week before Valentine's Day, he says, hey, Jarvis, we're on our weekly check-in call. He says, hey, I'm sure you've got this covered. I'm sure you've got this covered, man. I really am sure you've got this covered, but do you have flowers ordered for your wife on Valentine's Day? And I say, dude, I have to confess that I don't have that covered. He says, no worries, you have it covered now. Sure enough, on Valentine's Day, beautiful bouquet of roses arrives at my house. Now, again, some people listening might be thinking, hey, Jarvis, you really should have taken care of that. Yeah, shoulda, coulda, woulda. The thing is, it got taken care of because my virtual assistant, and that's also not something I want Colleen to be taking time for. Colleen's been with me for a very long time. She's very skilled. She's very well compensated. I don't necessarily want her time going to ordering flowers for Jackie. I want her focused on work. So back again, the VA, a good VA will be proactive on how they can bring value.
Now, as my wife does listen to our podcast frequently, I already take care of these things personally.
I know
and
you
do all of those.
Wink.
So, but what I will have my VA do on the serious side is I'm going to have them follow up on things that I've ordered, right?
Yes.
Because how often, and now I live in Alaska, so you guys maybe don't have a lot of this issue. Well, you ran into this trying to send me something.
Yeah.
You order something that says it ships to Alaska, and it's never going to come, right? And so these are things that I would easily say, hey, I'm going to take care of buying these or take care of getting these, and I need you to follow up on them, et cetera. Another 5-star tip when you're going into a new virtual assistant you should be explaining, your virtual assistant should be asking, if not, you should share, what are the things you're doing this week? You as the advisor, right? Then your VA needs to be able to look at that and to say, great, which of those tasks can I take away? Which of those tasks can I do? Because by default, when we first do this, and even I've been using assistants for a long time, I'm not super excited about giving them so many things to do, right? I'm getting worried, is it really going to get done? How are these things going to handle? Is it inside their skill set, et cetera? However, if I create a list of, hey, this is everything I have going on this week, and the VA looks at it and says, hey, here's the 7 things that I can do and I can crush, that is a great way to go.
Yeah, and we fall victim to this. This is delegation in general, but specifically with VAs, we fall victim to, oh, hey, I'll just do this, or there's not really that much going on, or it doesn't take that long. Booking flights comes to mind.
Yes.
Oh, it doesn't take me that long to book a flight. Well, it still does. It still takes you 10 or 15 minutes. You're probably going to log into 2 or 3 different sites, see what the best airfare is. Do I take the 6 a.m. flight or the 6 p.m. flight? Even if you're doing that in 30 minutes, you're probably playing Office and do it in 90 minutes. That's a great one for, again, your assistant to see, oh, I see that you're going to the Perfect RA conference in September. Have you booked flights? No, I haven't. Cool. Do you want me to just go ahead and book them? This is levels of permission. Do you want me to find 3 options and you can approve those? So it doesn't have to be, you and I with our VAs are pretty much a blank slate. Like, here's my requirements, just book it. Right. And get on the calendar, make sure it's refundable. I'll change it if I want it.
Yep.
But again, you could say, hey, find me the 3 best flights, write them down real quick and I'll pick.
Now, one of the things you have to embrace when you're doing this is that mistakes are going to happen. Right? The VA is going to make mistakes. And so one of the things, and even with our new team member, Melissa doing a fantastic job when she first onboarded as our integrator with the Perfect RA, we told her, says, hey, look, mistakes will happen and that's okay. And here's how we're going to define, right? Here's what can jeopardize your employment when you make a mistake. And here's what doesn't jeopardize your employment, right? So what jeopardizes your employment? You lied. Ooh, integrity breach, we have a big issue. Now, if a mistake is made, and again, we talked about this on the podcast, and it goes to my EAs, it goes to TPR, it goes to all of my team members across all of our companies, is did you follow the process? If I, as a leader, asked you to do something and created a process and it didn't come up with a desirable outcome that I wanted, that's not my team member's fault. Right now, if they didn't follow the process, so let's take your EA example. I said, hey, book me a ticket on Alaska Airlines because I want to go to Phoenix, right? And they book it on Spirit. Ooh, we have a problem, right? I don't even know if Spirit flies to Alaska, but anyways, concept of,
hopefully
right?
Not, yeah.
Hopefully not. But if they do, we have a big problem. Now, if they booked me on Alaska Airlines flight and got a cheap ticket in coach middle seat at 2 a.m., but I didn't tell them I don't fly at those times and I don't fly coach, that's not their fault. Right? Now, hopefully they've been listening to the podcast. They know these things. They can pick up on it, right? But that's not their fault because I failed to communicate that. So again, what's your process that you set up? Now, if you're thinking this is a lot of work, it is.
Yes, success is always a lot of work.
Correct. But the outcome is worth it because you're setting these things up and you're training your team members to alleviate decisions. So Jarvis, I agree with you, like booking flights, and I don't know how long it takes to book a flight, but assuming it takes 30 to 90 minutes, whatever you say, it's not for me the 30 to 90 minutes of booking a flight. It's the decision power I have burned when it's not the best use of my time. Look, here's my parameters. I only fly during this windows. These are the seats that I like. This is when I need to be at the event, and I'm moving on, right? I got other things that I want to use. That doesn't mean booking flights is below me. That's not what this is at all, right? This is all about what is the highest and best use of my time. Same reason I don't call clients to book appointments. It's not beneath me to call clients. I call clients, I chat with them. I like doing this thing. My relationship manager cannot do financial planning.
Yes.
Right? I mean, they can't do that. They don't have the skill set for that. Okay, so this doesn't mean anything's beneath the side of it. It's saying, no, this is the task that's best assigned for you. So it elevates what I'm going to do. Our whole mission is to deliver massive value. So if I can delegate something to a team member that allows me to free up my decision-making ability so I can engage with more clients and add more value, the entire team wins.
Belay has been helping busy leaders with their staffing solutions for over a decade. Belay intentionally pairs clients with US-based virtual assistants and accounting specialists. You know the great leaders don't do anything alone, so get the support you need with Belay. To help you get started, Belay is offering a free download of their CEO's book, Rise Up and Lead Well: How Leveraging an Assistant Will Change Your Life and Maximize Your Time. Just text RIA to 55123 to get your free copy today.
Yeah, and there's a lot of science that shows that you only have so much decision-making power. Now, some people argue with that a little bit. So let's just say you only have so many quality decisions. Do I really want to spend my decision-making power on the 6 a.m. flight versus the 6:15 flight? or my decision power on a Roth conversion or how to help a client that was recently widowed. That's where I want to put my decision. Now, a mistake I see advisors make, I was talking to an advisor just the other day. He said, Jarvis, I'm going to hire an employee or a virtual assistant once I get all these processes written. You laugh because you've seen this before. Once I get all these processes written, you'll never get the processes written. Or when you do, your practice will be so dismal that it won't matter. The assistant can write those processes. Yes. So that's where we'll use this flight example because it's an easy one. Everybody flies places. Hey, I need to fly here on this date. Start looking for flights and don't book anything, but let's just start working through. I ran into once, I talked about in my book, my virtual assistant booked a bulkhead row. I'm a tall guy. I don't like the bulkhead row, but we hadn't ever talked about that. So that was a great one. I said, after that flight, I said, hey, listen, please update the process to put no bulkhead seats. And then it was never a problem again.
Yeah. And again, you got to look at it, go back and review the process. And it's easy for me to get angry when I don't get an outcome that I like. Just one of my many flaws, right? Yeah. And so I have to know that going into it. And then I got to check myself and be like, okay, now I need to go back and not get angry at my team member, but go back and look at this entire process to go through for the outcome. So a pro tip in here, when you have your team member coming on to build a process, right? They have no idea what you want, nor how to do this. Even if they said they booked travel before, that means so many different things. Let me just tell you from working with VAs, right? And so what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to do the process with them. I'm going to record it on Loom, on whatever. Yeah. And my rule with this, Jarvis, let me know if you have anything different. Every time I click, I explain what decision I made and why I made that decision, right? If I click a date, why did I choose that date? I want to come in a day before event, especially if I'm speaking at the event, right? I want a day before the event. I want to be on the local time zone. I want to do these things, right? If I'm going to a competition, I want to show up 2 or 3 days in advance, right? I don't want to have to worry about jet lag. I want to get climatized to where I am so I can compete at a high level, so I can do these things. So these are my rules. So every time I click, I'm going to articulate what decision it is, why I'm making that decision. And I'm going to go through the entire process with them. Then I'm going to kick it over to them. Then I want them to document that process in step by step what it was. Then I need to review that process. Again, do you think this is a lot of work? Yes.
Success is always a lot of work.
Yes. Yes, it is, right? But now I've created a framework for success that my team member can go and implement. I'm going to say another area that I think advisors make mistakes on.
Just real quick on that. So when you're doing that recording, then just for our listeners, that's I was called that a stream of consciousness recording. You're just verbally vomiting every thought. Oh, 6:03. I don't really like 6:03. Oh, at 9:30. You know what? 9:30 is a little bit later than I want. And it seems silly to do it, but that's what makes all the difference. They don't know what's in your brain. Often you don't know either. Got to just be stream of consciousness. Oh, I don't want to go the day of. That's the last flight of the night. If that gets delayed, then I won't be able to make it. You know, I want one flight. All these things that you're not thinking of, you just say them out loud. Yeah.
Why am I going to choose a 10 o'clock or a 9 o'clock flight versus a 7 o'clock flight? Well, I live an hour away from the airport. So a 7 a.m. flight, it boards at 6. That means I got to be there at 5 for discussion. I'm an hour away. So I get to get up at 4. Okay. Well, so 3:30 wake up for a 7 o'clock flight. This doesn't seem like a fun time for me, right? Yeah. And so, those are the things that I love, that stream of consciousness.
Your price bands, like, well, I would get up at 7 a.m. if it was $1,000 less. Like, what's that price band? So all those things. But Micah, just to keep our podcast moving on the sake of time, how do you actually find a virtual assistant, right? Where have you found them in the past? And we want to talk about I don't call it a partnership, but it's something we're testing out with a virtual assistant firm that I actually use myself.
So I'll tell you about the ways that didn't work very well to find assistants. Right now, I've used Google, I've used Upwork, I've used Elance. Right, I've gone in there to try to recreate the process myself because I was being cheap. I was saying, you know what, I don't want to go to these agencies and pay double the price or blah blah blah. I can figure it out on my own and be so much better. As our good friend Michael Hinley says, now I'd rather copy genius than invent mediocrity. Right. So especially starting out with these things, man, I'm an agency fan. So I would go to Belay, which is who we're talking about right now. I know it's who you got Zach from. It's been working out really well. I would go to an agency that specializes in this because they're going to help filter and find that for you. Now, is that my permanent solution? Maybe not. Right? But again, none of my solutions are permanent. They're the best solution for what I have now. And I want to use that. Now, what I like about the agency setup, and let me know if it's any different with Belay in your experience, is I could be working with Bob and it's just not clicking. For whatever reason, it's just not the personality style, the outcome, whatever. I'm going to go and email Bob's supervisor and say, hey, I like the concept. This isn't working. Here's what I don't like. They're going to take care of that HR issue. They're going to find me a new assistant for what works. And now I can pivot. And you want to talk about just a time saver. That right there is phenomenal. And all the training they've put into making a successful virtual assistant. You're going to pay for it one way or another. And you're going to pay 10x that if you try to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, for sure. You're going to want, especially when you're looking with agencies. And I used to work with a regional agency agency out of Seattle because I was located up there previously. Belay is nice because they've got people all over the country, but you wanted to see how many questions they ask you, right? How are they really trying to find someone that matches up to you and your personality and your needs? Or are they just giving you like, hey, well, Dave's the next one up on the docket. So one of the reasons I started using Belay was because, so again, what I ran into is I needed a virtual assistant, executive assistant to take over some of my personal and business things that fell between the different companies that we run. And so I reached out to Belay. I'd seen them at several conferences. We went through a process, which, interesting note, that Belay found me a virtual assistant, had somebody all lined up the week before they were going to start. The person's dad got sick and they said, I can't take on any new clients. And Belay was very apologetic about this. They said, oh, Jarvis, we're so sorry. And I said, please don't be at all. Because if I had gone through the entire hiring process on my own and this has happened, I'd have to start all the way over from scratch. You guys have a whole inventory of people, not inventory is not the right word, but a whole backlog of people that now, and they had somebody set up for me the next week. So what would have set me back 6 months,
yes,
set them back a week.
6 months or more, right? Because you just probably just have failed at that and said, screw it, it's not worth it. I can't believe I was going to go down this path. I'll just have to do it all myself.
Yeah, it is. So I'm excited to be talking with Belay on our call on Wednesday. They're also going to have an ebook to download to help you find a virtual assistant. So whether you use Belay or anyone else, that ebook can help you on the virtual assistant process.
And I would say, regardless if you have a virtual assistant or not, go get the ebook.
Yes.
Right? Go look at it, because this is always ways to up your game with your current team. So I would go get that. I'd review it, take those tips. And of course, the biggest thing that we want out of the ebook, out of the podcast, is action items. This podcast is all about action items. So Jarvis, what's the number one action items that our listeners should do this week?
This one's bold. I'm going to say hire a virtual assistant.
Ooh.
Even if you say, hey, for a month contract or a 2-month contract, look to see how much more efficient your life will become. I have yet to meet a highly successful advisor who did that and said, wow, that really set my life back. Hire one. Be bold. It was scary for me the first time I've done it. It was scary for me every time I've done it. And it transformed my life and my practice each time. So I know that's a bold statement, but if you want bold success, take bold action, hire a virtual assistant.
And don't go back. A second action item. Once you do this, do not go back. They're probably not going to be the right fit because you really don't know what you're looking for the first go around, right? Again, that's why using an agency is fantastic. You can kind of rotate around from that aspect to find out what you need. But that concept, we look at all these really successful people, they have team members that are there designed to make their life easier. And that's the other pro tip I'm going to throw out there. Any virtual assistant I hire, I make sure at the very top, their job is to make my life easier.
That's right.
Because it's a nice wide category and a lot of stuff fits inside of that. But if they're not on board with that concept, they're not a good virtual assistant for me.
I would say a third and final action item will be, as soon as you start your virtual assistant, have them, of course, sign you up for the Perfect RIA and Retirement Tax Services Summits the end of September. They can get you registered, book your flights, book your hotel, and then you can let us know how that goes.
Fantastic. Well, Jarvis, as always, this is amazing. And until next time, happy planning.
Happy planning.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife.